Good evening. This is North American Dark Skies. I'm your host, Peggy Sue, and we're talking about photographing lightning. Learning to shoot photographing lightning takes practice. It takes learning about the weather and how it's shaped by your geographic location. You need to learn to see the light and manually guesstimate the right camera settings to use. This is a hobby that is inherently dangerous. Please always use common sense and take safety precautions. Lightning is not best shot in storms like derechos and tornadoes. The best storms to shoot lightning in are the midsummer thunderstorms at the end of a long hot day that are just easy rolling electrical storms. The tools you will need for this are a good DSLR or mirrorless camera with a wide-angle lens, a wired camera release with a lightning trigger, a tripod. I highly recommend having a cell phone and an additional streaming device like a tablet or a small computer that has streaming so you can listen to both your lightning meter and have radar going at the same time. Apps like Lightning Pro and Blitzertongue tell you how hot the lightning is, where the best lightning pockets are, and tell you how close that lightning is to you so you can be safe. Weather Finder is a good prediction app. It has a 10-day forecast, and you can use that to see where the highest winds are going to be, where the precipitation is going to be, to kind of guesstimate where your worst of your storms are going to hit, and kind of focus on where not to be, typically for the worst of it. A good weather app is essential with radar. I highly recommend having a weather radar or a secondary phone or tablet that can stream Ryan Hall UL. For those of you that have never heard about Ryan, he's on YouTube, runs a YouTube channel that goes live anytime there's any type of severe weather in the United States. He is hooked in with all the different weather chasers throughout the U.S., and they will give live reports to him, and they have live feeds so you can actually see what they are seeing as they're going. And these are the people that are telling the National Weather Service, hey, there's a tornado on the ground. So you're cutting out the middleman or the middlemen and getting the live report the same as the Weather Service before they even warn the storm, which is giving most people anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes extra lead time to take cover before some bad weather gets to them. And this is really saving lives. So I would recommend having one or the other in the car with you just in case something turns bad while you're out there. And trust me, things can turn bad quickly, because I have sat on a shoreline, watched a roll cloud go from flat roll cloud on the surface of the lake to towering thousands of feet in the air in less than 5 minutes before, and it went on 20 minutes later, 60 miles down the road, to drop a tornado as it continued to build and got over the heat of the land and hit the wind shear. So these things can develop rapidly, and they can, another instance, I can tell you, I really had wished I'd had the radio in the car with me at the time, had Ryan Hall UL. My girlfriend was with me. We were over in Empire. I was sitting at the boat ramp, and there was a little thunderstorm. It was bad, but not super severe. But it looked funny. And she got out of the car and was running around trying to take photographs of it. And I'm trying to get her back in the car because I know it's not safe. I'm on the phone with Noah saying, hey, this doesn't look right. Is there something out in front of me that I can't see? And he said, yeah, about 100, 200 feet out in front of you, there's a water spout in the lake right in front of you right now. So yeah, you want to have something that you can get warnings on. Okay, the best tools I found for triggers for your camera I have found these little cheap $7-8 triggers that have a wire so you can manually hold your camera shutter open are the best to have. They aren't fancy, they aren't complicated, and they're really easy to use. A lightning meter works by, they sense the first liter of lightning, open your shutter, and then they close it as soon as they get the bolt of lightning. And it also can catch motion of like a water droplet hitting a glass of water. Different shapes of land and different temperatures on the land and different temperatures on the lakes can drastically alter weather patterns and how weather moves. Take the time to learn about your geographical location and how that impacts the weather in your area. It also look at how the jet stream is moving on that given day through your area, because that will determine weather as well. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I live in Traverse City, Michigan. I live in a bowl. That bowl gets real warm. I'm at the bottom of a bay that kind of traps the heat right over Traverse City. So it forces the storms to go around us. The worst of it either goes to the north or to the south of us. Where I sit, it generally funnels at about 10 miles to the north of me. I can see the weather leaving Wisconsin because I'm about 30-40 miles off the bay or off Lake Michigan, and then we have the lake in Wisconsin. So I have a pretty clear view across the sky to Wisconsin. That lake, from about 50 miles south of me till about 20 to 40 miles north of me, has a very long, cold pocket in the lake that's very deep and very cold. And that shapes all of northern Michigan's weather, because if that lake is very cold in the summertime or in the spring, it will take the thunderstorms moving across it and it'll pull the energy out of them, and you'll take the lightning away and it'll calm the storms down. If it's very warm by midsummer, it will actually feed the weather and you'll get more severe weather that year. Likewise, if the lakes don't freeze and you get the right weather systems coming across that lake, you can get evaporation in the winter and ends up with mountains of snow called lake effect snow. But as soon as the lakes freeze, you can start getting the weather patterns crossing across the lake without dumping the massive amounts of snow. That's what I mean by knowing how weather moves in your area on the geographical location and what shapes your weather. You will want to use different weather apps. I have mentioned Windfinder being one that you can use as a prediction. How Lightning Pro and Blitzertung works is they take a map of a section of the United States, say we're doing the Great Lakes or the Midwest. It divides it up into what they call radars, or square blocks within that map. And you can decide how big that block is, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles. And you can decide on how long you want to monitor each block, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it will tell you how many bolts of lightning have hit within that time period in that block. So I can look at a map and know lightning is here. This is all marked here in bright red. So I know the lightning's here, but it was here 20 minutes ago because it's all white over here and it's not. It's showing it's already passed over here, but it shows me the track of where it has been so I can see how it's moving. You want to use these so you can get your tracking on the lighting and so you can see where the hot spots and pockets of lightning are. This way you can line yourself up in advance of the storms to know how to catch those particular hot pockets. It also gives you how far away the lightning is. Now, I start shooting when it's leaving Wisconsin. So I'm shooting when it's 75 miles away sometimes. And that is giving me enough time that I can actually stand out somewhere on a high hill and shoot for a while until it's close to 30 miles from me. And then I have to get down into a location where I can be parallel to the storm and inside my car, because lightning can hit you 30 miles in any direction from a storm. Ever heard the phrase bolt from the blue? Well, that means there might be a storm 20, 30 miles from you, and you're standing under blue skies next to a tree, and lightning hits that tree because it traveled 30 miles from that thunderstorm to hit the tree under blue skies. It's called a bolt from the blue. It happens all the time, and that's kind of why a lot of people get struck by lightning, because they think they're safe because they're under blue skies, and they aren't. You really got to know that you're within a safe distance from that storm, and it's got to be 30 miles away. Now, why do I say be in your car? Your car is built to be a Faraday box. A Faraday box is a closed box that takes an electrical circuit and runs it around the surface, but doesn't let it reach the inside. So your car is built to run the electricity around the frame of the car down through the tires into the ground as the path of least resistance. As long as it doesn't make a direct hit to the windshield, and as long as you are not holding on to metal in the car, you should be fine. You might be a little deaf because of the bang. You might be a little blind because it's going to make a big flash, but physically, you're not going to be harmed by the flash of light or by the lightning. An additional topic I want to mention that I rarely hear talked about, and it really does need to be addressed, especially with what's going on in our world today. And why I feel this is so important, and let me explain the science of it. We are going through a magnetic pole reversal on Earth. This means our North and South Pole are bending and moving toward each other. They're going to migrate, bend, cross each other, and then flip. So the North Pole will be at the South, and the South Pole will be at the North. This happens every 400,000 years or so. When that happens, our magnetosphere, or our bubble that's out there protecting Earth around our atmosphere, is weakening. This is allowing any space particles, radiation, electromagnetic energy to enter lower into our atmosphere. And why that is important is we just started back in March of 2022 into our next solar maximum cycle. And it's starting out to be stronger than expected. It means we're getting bigger storms than we expected to have, and these storms are having a bigger effect on us than we were thinking they were going to have. So we are at a little bit more danger from these storms. What are the dangers? Well, other than the obvious of it can burn up our electrical grid, take out our satellites, wave goodbye to cell phones, computers, anything electronic, and you can live in the dark ages for 10 years. If you get the right solar storm at the right exact angle at the right moment. The other thing we're in danger of is when these solar storms dump electromagnetic energy into our atmosphere, they build and feed hurricanes, thunderstorms, lightning. They intensify lightning. If you think back to Hurricane Ian, and you remember the day before the hurricane was to hit, it was like a KP3, and they weren't making a big deal about it. And everybody says, be prepared, move back away from, make all your preparations, but it's not supposed to be that bad. We're expecting a strong surge, prepare for the surge, but we're not expecting it to be that bad. And the next morning we woke up and it was up to a hurricane category 5. Well, and the weathermen were all scratching their heads saying, we don't know what happened. The aurora hunters knew what happened. We were all laughing at them because we knew we had auroras overnight, and those auroras were seen as low as Des Moines, Iowa, or Indianapolis, way below Chicago. And those typically aren't places you see a lot of auroras. You might see them in Milwaukee once in a while. We see them pretty regularly here in Traverse City at a low level, but to see them at the level that they were in Des Moines, Iowa was pretty irregular, and it was abnormal. And it took a unusual circumstance for it to be that strong. And we've had several of those abnormal circumstances happen since that storm, that the electromagnetic energy is dropping lower into the atmosphere. And this is going to intensify any lightning we have. I know this spring that I was seeing lightning the likes I'd never seen before. Spider lightning that was going hundreds of miles where I could not see either end of it. It was streaking across the sky in ways I had never seen it streak across the sky before, and it was because of the solar storms. So you want to know what your solar weather is doing as well as what your surface weather is doing, because it may determine whether you should be out in that storm. How does lightning work? Lightning starts by there being a negative charge in the lower part of the cloud, a positive charge in the upper part of the cloud, and a positive charge in the ground. And the negative little charges start looking for the positive, so they can make a connection. They want a date bad, so they start sending out all these little feelers to find a date, and we won't even see these feelers because they happen in milliseconds. And then we will see the bolt of lightning come down and they actually don't come down. They actually go both ways. So it's reaching up from the ground at the same time it's reaching down from the sky for ground to cloud lightning. Those little feelers are called leaders. And they can have multiple leaders happen in milliseconds before they actually have the bolt of lightning. This photo is the actual moment that the lightning reached up from the ground to connect with the cloud, negative charge at the cloud, and create the flashover. This was about 20 miles from me. It was so bright that it wiped out the color, and I had to pull it black and white to get any detail out of it at all. Storms have their own personality. You really gotta just sit and observe them and pay attention and remember each storm. Storms will have hot pockets. So there might be a mile wide or 5 mile wide, 10 mile wide area that all the lightning is centered in. And then there might be one 20 miles away that has another hot pocket. And if it's a long line of thunderstorms, you might have 10 pockets of lightning over the whole entire state at the same time. And they all dance. They answer each other. They communicate with each other. And there's a rhythm to the whole thing. And if you're paying attention, you can almost time some of those rhythms, and you want to focus on the hot spots that are closest to you, and you pay attention to that rhythm. And you can almost predict when they're going to flash sometimes. Safest place to shoot is from your car. I generally collapse the legs of my tripod, make it into a monopod, trap it against my car door, using my knee to stabilize and hold the camera and tripod stable. I sit parallel to the storm. I do not advise opening the tailgate and shooting from under the tailgate or opening a door to a van and sitting in that open doorway, because that reduces the effectiveness of the Faraday cage. You're creating an opening, and that opening is a path of least resistance that the lightning will use. And you will become the path of least resistance, and you don't want that. Lightning is as hot as the surface of the sun. This is why I'm saying you don't want to be hit by it. The temperature within a specific bolt of lightning is not always the same. And in this picture, you can see how that the lightning begins to cool as the different branches of lightning take off from the main branch where it's the hottest. We measure white balance by using the Kelvin scale. Kelvin scale, for most night photography, we typically use 3200 to 400, depending on the tone of your sensor and the type of the ambient light around you and the temperature of the lightning you are shooting. Generally, if I'm shooting auroras, I'm at 32 to 3400, and I will play with it a little bit when I'm shooting lightning, depending on whether I'm getting reds, blues, purples in the lightning clouds. Some of this can be fine-tuned in editing, but it's best you get this as close as possible to what you want in the camera. Shooting lightning is very different than shooting auroras. In shooting lightning, we are not trying to collect light as we do with auroras. We are trying to prevent as much light from coming into the camera. We begin by using either bulb mode or long exposure shutter speed. And that is your preference. I use bulb mode, and I do everything manually. I'm counting my seconds manually. Because we are having to worry about, we are not worried about tack sharp stars, you can use longer than 30-second shutter speed. Next, because you want to limit the light from bright flashes and bolts of lightning, you want to pick a higher aperture. This also keeps everything in sharp focus in the frame, so that all things, no matter where the lightning hits, is in sharp focus. So if one hits close to you, 10 miles from you, and another one hits 50 miles from you, they're all in nice sharp focus. Typically f11 is used, but you can use higher apertures in some instances. ISO can be variable, and this is where you have to practice. If lightning is far away and dimmer, you can use a higher ISO. If I'm 75 miles away and I can either leave my shutter speed open longer and catch multiple bolts, and I can raise my ISO higher and catch more. If the lightning's 10 miles from me and it is super bright, I'm obviously going to set my shutter speed or my ISO down to 50 to 100, as low as I possibly can get it, because I want to limit the amount of light coming in from that lightning flash so I don't overexpose the picture. Lastly, let's get some safety guides. Make sure you have some sort of weather warning system. Listen, tornadoes can drop really fast. Derechos can pop pretty quickly. You don't want to be caught in something you don't know is coming at you. Always make sure you have some sort of form of early warning system. Be in your car when lightning is closer than 30 miles from you. If you're trapped in a high wind situation that is not a tornadic system, put your nose to the wind to avoid getting your car rolled over. When choosing a location, make sure you have no power lines, trees that can fall on you. Make sure you have nothing that's going to blow at you like farm implements. Make sure that you're not near metal buildings that can conduct electricity. Also, make sure you have somewhere nearby to go in case severe weather does develop. And make sure that you have an escape route in case you do get trapped in severe weather. If at any time you see a cloud moving forward toward you that looks like these clouds, please seek safety. These are supercells or duraceos. They are going to contain severe winds and hail at the very least, and very likely to contain a tornadic cell if you're in a tornado or area that has frequent tornadoes. If you are in an area that you do not see a lot of tornadoes, then you may be safe enough. You can just point your nose to the wind and ride it out, but it's risky. Fun, I've done it more than once, but risky. Now, if you look at the bottom one right here, now this didn't come across really bad where I was at this morning, but you can look here and it almost looks like there is a tornado right down in here that's trying to form. That looks like there's a rotation right there. It just hasn't dropped. But meanwhile, there's also things like this. This is called scud. There are these little finger things that hang down below these clouds that are more associated with rain that are not anything to worry about. If there's not a rotation to it, it's probably scud. But if there is a rotation in the clouds, you want to seek cover. Okay. Quick note, my work is often a very spiritual thing for me because thunderstorms are the thunderbirds or the grandfather thunders coming to cleanse the earth, and it is a very spiritual thing. And so you will see a lot of my work has spirit faces and visits from the spirits within it. And this last picture, I'll tell you a little story. For anybody who doesn't know the story of Sleeping Bear Sand Dune, real quick, a long time ago, there was a mother bear and cubs. There was a wildfire burning in Wisconsin, and she was trapped on the shores of Wisconsin with nowhere to go but into the lake and across the lake to safety of Michigan. And so her cubs and her decided to swim across the lake to get away from the fire. And it was cold, and it was really rough water, big waves, very cold, windy, nasty weather. And it was a very hard swim. And as the mother got over to the shores of Lake Michigan and she exhaustedly pulled herself up on shore, she turned around and she didn't see her babies. Her two little cubs were not behind her. And she started pacing the shores, and she was calling to her cubs, and she was calling to her cubs, and she was praying for her cubs, and she was worried about her cubs, and she prayed and she cried and she called to them and called to them and called to them. And the Creator was so impressed by her heartache and so impressed by her dedication that he raised her two little cubs up to be North and South Manitou Island that sits just off the shores of Sleeping Bear National Park, and made them into islands. And as she fell into an exhausted sleep, he covered her with sand, and she became Sleeping Bear the Sleeping Bear Dune that the lake is, or the park is named after. And I was chasing a pocket thunderstorm, a very small isolated thunderstorm one night, and I was sitting right back behind Mother Bear Dune, which is right here. This is Mother Bear Dune. And as this storm came up over the top of Mother Bear Dune, it took the shape of a bear head. And this is not a manipulation. This is exactly what the cloud did. It was as if Mother Bear is saying, I'm still here. Don't forget me. I'm still watching out for all of you. So I will leave you with that little story. I hope you will follow us on YouTube. If you need to reach out, my email is there. Enjoy, and thank you for listening